All right, all right. Good morning. Good morning. Are you ready for the Love the Game 24/7 podcast show? Good morning to some and good afternoon to some others. Appreciate you guys jumping in and following the Love the Game podcast live on YouTube, IG, and Facebook. And I am your host, Coach Jeff Smith, Senior. Just want to make sure that's clear because I got a second out there that's balling and doing this thing. So want to make sure this is, the difference between the two. I'm the first, Senior, and I appreciate you guys uh, helping grow the community for Love the Game 24/7 podcast. And so whether you're listening to me live or the video, I appreciate you. Be sure you subscribe, follow, share, get the information out there. I like that rhyme, right? Subscribe, share, and get the information out there to your young athletes and parents or friends who has a young person that is playing high school or middle school sports. So I thank you for joining me, Coach Smith, your host of Love the Game 24/7 live this Saturday morning or afternoon for those. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late. I was up late trying to wait for the wife to get in from Texas, seeing her or seeing our grandbabies out in Texas all week. She really enjoyed that, seeing that. She goes out as often as possible to be a blessing to my son and my daughter in love, the real Kim, for you guys that don't know, or Jay Smith Jr., if you want to follow and help them grow as well. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys coming on and hearing some great information on the recruiting space for your middle school and high school athletes. And even though, I'm going to be setting up some interviews here for the month of May in the summer, because you guys should be working on what summer camps you're going to be attending this summer. But even though I may come from more of a football or basketball perspective, recruiting is still the same. So it doesn't matter whether you're male or female or what sport you're playing, lacrosse, soccer, recruiting is recruiting. I've had these conversations with college coaches from all different sports. Recruiting is recruiting. At my university here locally, where I'm an administrator, had conversation with the track coach not too long ago, and one thing he shared, students just need to email, reach out, get your information out there, get your times out there, so they'll know. And of course, they are. In a sport like track, they're looking at times, the high school times, and comparing them to what they are to college times and where a kid could possibly grow in their program and their track program. So, recruiting is recruiting, guys, right? And I want to give out good information because there's a lot that, going on. There's some things that's been brewing in me about what's going on with some of these young men and women, but mainly these young men in this football and this social media world that we'll get into discussion today. But yes, thank you guys. Please hit that subscribe button on my YouTube and the follow on my Instagram and as well as TikTok. I'm on TikTok as well, and I will, as always, put my Linktree link in the chat to ensure that you don't have an issue with finding Coach Smith and Love the Game 24/7 podcast. Make it real easy for you guys. So I'm sticking that in the chat right now on Facebook and on YouTube. I'll try to get it in on my IG. But I'm definitely going to share it in the chat on Facebook and YouTube. You guys feel free to ask some questions, and I'll try to get to them as best I can. Let me jump on my IG and try to put this on here as well. You guys bear with me for a moment. Let me put this on there. Let me help the folks that are with me on IG get this as well, so they don't have an issue with joining me live or finding my social media platforms to learn the recruiting game, the recruiting strategies, how to market yourself or yourselves, right? It's very important that you learn that and know that, right? And so the topic today, that I have out here today, is handle your social media business, right? Because I see a lot of bad social media business being handled out here. And I've had this brewing in me for a couple of weeks as I'm sitting back watching some of these kids, and it just amazes me that even some parents, you got to be responsible, especially when some of you all are hoping to try to get to the next level. We'll get into that too, but you got to handle your social media business better, young athletes, even while you're not in college, especially when you're trying to get recruited and you're trying to go to the next level, from high school to college. And you got to be smart. You got to use some wisdom. And parents, you have to monitor. You can't be lax, parents. Okay. Even though I was busy with coaching my sons, even before my sons got to high school, I was coaching high school sports. I coached them in Little League. But before they left Little League, I started getting my experience in high school coaching, so I could have that under my belt, because I have experience playing Little League, high school, college, and professional, following one of my older brothers who did the same thing. So you're speaking to Coach Smith, who has experience at every level, and now have the blessing of having one of my sons being able to have that same experience and even longer than I had, or his uncle, in the professional league. But you're speaking to, or you're listening to, a coach, a former player, right, coach, and a dad of a current player in the NFL, going on 6 years in the league. So you're not listening or hearing from someone on this podcast who doesn't know anything about what they're talking about, or didn't use these methods and tactics that I'm sharing with you. And you can get even more detail and more information, intimate information and details, if you choose to sign up with my or partner with Love the Game 24/7. And you can do that if you desire. You can reach out to me at lovethe247game@gmail.com. I have people signing up already, working with some people right now as we speak to help them. Working with a young man here locally. Parents don't really have the background or knowledge, so I'm doing everything I can, because they're paying for it. I'm gonna give them everything I got, right? And I got others as well coming on board, and I've had some in the past that I did it for free. But now, because I don't have children at home anymore, I got a lot of time. That's why I'm doing my podcast. I'm available, other than when I'm gonna start traveling for the NFL season, when my oldest son starts playing. But I have the blessing of raising two. My wife and I are raising two successful young sons. So you're not listening to somebody who doesn't know anything about what they're talking about, or who isn't connected with some people to get current information and what's going on as well. So I reach out to people all the time, coaches, when I'm helping young people in their recruiting. Not afraid to reach out and talk to people and get some questions, get some answers, get some thoughts, so I can be straightforward and honest with a young athlete's opportunity or potential to go to the next level in college and playing college sports or even professional. Okay, because I work with GMB Management Group. I'm involved with the sports agency, GMB Management Group, who represents my son. Got involved more and more with them as well. So you're listening to Coach Smith, who has experience at every level, subject matter expert, you know, and I want to help people. But as I said, the discussion today is just like, seeing all this stuff out here, it bothers me and it amazes me, especially from my community, from those who look like me, especially that we want to hold somebody like Deion Sanders like to a higher standard than some other coach that has like a Nick Saban or somebody else, And I'm not saying nobody's held Nick Saban accountable. Yeah, these folks, they do get held accountable. In some instances, they don't. But in their community, they're not getting raked across the coals on social media like Deion Sanders is right about now. And he is a subject matter expert. And if I had sons coming out right now, I'd be doing everything I could to get them to get to Colorado and play, especially if I knew they could play and they had the ability to play like my oldest son did. So if he was coming out right now as a quarterback, I definitely would be pushing him. And as good as he was in high school as a quarterback in Florida, and doing a great job of helping lead his team to their first state championship appearance in his junior year. That ain't by happenstance. That was a collective teamwork from the head coach on down to the trainers, to the athletic staff, and of course the players. Not just my son, but he had a lot to do with that. And but it just amazes me and it bothers me somewhat as to because Deion Sanders has some kids who somewhat may be high-profile kids in the portal, and as if some coaches who don't look like him didn't have that same issue, but we're going to hold him or rake his name through the mud as if he's doing something different, and he's not doing anything different than what any other college coach, whether high profile or not high profile college coach, would have to do. He has to assess talent, and then he also has to assess what you're doing as an athlete outside of while you're there on scholarship. What are you doing? And see, this is what a lot of people comment on some things with very little information. The term is ignorance, and ignorance means you lack of understanding. Lack of all the information. Because rest assured, as a former college athlete, and for those of you who may be listening live or in the recording who were former college athletes, male or female at any sport, knows there's a lot of stuff that goes on that people have no clue, no idea about. But we're going to hold Deion Sanders, especially those in my community that look like me and look like him, as if he's supposed to do special favors because of somebody that looks like him. And that bothers me. You got to understand that high school little league sports, yes, at that level, there's money being made. Of course there is, but that money is being made to help keep those programs going, right? To keep that little league association going. It's being very impactful to the young boys and girls in their community for whatever sport it is. So yeah, there's money being made, but it's not directly to the players, right? To the athletes. And like I said, whatever sport, doesn't matter. But those athletes, young athletes are doing well. Family and friends are coming out, supporting. Food is being sold. Tickets are being sold. I don't know about jerseys and all that. Probably in today's world, some of those things are being sold, I'm sure. And there's money being made. But like I said, for the most part, it's to help keep that little league association or that AAU team going. And, and it's the same when you get to high school. It's to help keep that high school program going, to have, you know, really good uniforms, really good uh, trainers and medical staff. When things happen, all that stuff takes money. So ticket sales, of course, there's some jersey sales, because the school will sell different things to try to help pump money into their athletic program for all sports. And that's done at all sports. And it's up to you to decide whether you want to go play at that little league team and pay your fee, pay your membership fee or whatever, being part of that little league association that they charge everybody in most cases, or raise money to help pay for some kids who may not be able to afford the full amount. But you don't want that young person to miss, that young girl or boy to miss an opportunity to participate. But when we get to college, it's a whole different ball game, because now you, as an athlete, you are directly, even before NIL, right? Because you're getting a scholarship. And I hate to use the word free, because it's not a free education. Because when you're an athlete, you're working. It's your job. So it's not free. And I wish people would stop using that term, because I don't remember anybody doing my workouts, getting up in the morning and training and lifting weights and running and putting all the dedication and time like me and my brothers did on the football field, on the track. I don't remember anybody doing that for me. So it wasn't a free education. I paid for that education by conducting myself accordingly, by making sure I made my grades. I didn't have anybody taking tests for me. I didn't have anybody doing homework for me. I may have had somebody proofread something for me. And most times I didn't. I just did it myself, which probably wasn't always smart to do. It's always good to get somebody to proofread something for you. So I did that from time to time, but nobody did my work. I earned my high school diploma. I earned my college degree in 4 years. Took extra hours that I had to get approved, because you weren't supposed to be able to take more than like over 20 hours. In my last year in college, I took like 20 plus hours, but it was within my major in the business degree. I took in the fall and spring term, even though it was during the seasons of football and track and field. I still took 20 plus hours. I had to get it okayed by the business school department head, Dr. Livermore, the great late Dr. Livermore, may he rest in peace. I love that man. He's a big part of helping me fulfill my dream of graduating in 4 years. And also Miss Pamela Mickelson, both back at Morningside College in Sioux City, Iowa, had a lot to do with this person that you see sitting in front of you get that 4-year degree and that 4-year goal that I had and dream that I had, so I could chase my dream of playing pro football, but with my degree in my pocket. And so you guys got to understand, young ladies, young men, that when you sign that contract, that scholarship contract, also when you get accepted to school, to a university, you've been admitted, and that's for every student, whether they're athlete or not. Their conduct is a contract. Their conduct, or ways that you're supposed to conduct yourselves accordingly, or you can be kicked out of school, right? And that's for every student when you decide to sign that you're going to attend that college or university. Okay, and I don't care if it's junior college or community college, or whether it's a traditional 4-year school or 4-year private school. You're talking to someone, and you're listening to someone, Coach Jeff Smith, who's been a college and higher ed administrator going on almost 25 years right now. So I'm dropping you some nuggets right now on that to help you parents right now, help sit down and explain these things to your kids, for some of you all who may not know. But that's a contract agreement, and you're to conduct yourself accordingly. So when you're an athlete, right, because of your blessed ability, okay, you're afforded some more privileges, and rightly so, because you've worked hard, young lady, young man, and earned those privileges of whatever that school decides they want to do and give their athletes, because of you give so much back to your school as an athlete, as a student athlete. You give a lot back. And so in return, they're allowing for you to have that scholarship. And that scholarship is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's business. And because of the world of social media now, schools have had to, like they always do on a yearly basis, adjust their policies and procedures, and their conduct policies have now had to include social media responsibility. And that's not just for students and student athletes, that's also for staff members, employees, right? Everybody is up under that same thing. So just understand, Deion Sanders has a responsibility. And there may be some things that may be out of his hand, depending upon what some of his student athletes may get themselves into. And I was at a little Division II school, NCAA Division II school in Morningside College, and we all had some guys and girls that may have gotten themselves in things. I know I got some high school students have gotten themselves in things, but definitely, I don't think he's not being any less fair to any of those athletes. And some of them have left on their own merit, that he didn't necessarily push him out the door. It was their decision because maybe they didn't like that now they have to be challenged, because maybe some things have always been given to them. And I'm not saying to those athletes it has been, but I know in today's environment, as a coach and someone who has coached for almost 13 years prior to me relocating up here to North Carolina a little over 2 years ago, the environment in coaching is totally different in some respects. And some of it's great and some of it's not so great. Just like when I grew up. I'm sure some of it was great and some of it wasn't, but it's a lot different with social media. We didn't have social media. It's a lot more difficult, I think, today. And so that's why we have to talk about this. That's why, as parents, you better be monitoring your child's social media presence and don't just let them say stuff. Because this young man is who and several others who have left Colorado, you got to understand, you're trying to go to the next level. Okay. And we'll get on that in a little bit. Let me just digress back to about how some people are trying to make Deion Sanders look bad. Now, we don't have that many coaches, black coaches in NCAA. We got more GMs, I think, in the NFL today and coaches than we do in college football. And to me, that's not good, because I know there's some good African-American coaches out there, and there's some good white coaches out there as well that's not getting their opportunity. And I don't think I think it's tougher on someone that looks like me, because it's evident, because look at what Deion is going through, but because of who he is and what he brings, when you look at the economics that has changed, that has been brought to Colorado, to that area, it's worth having him be a head coach. And I know there's some other coaches that can bring it now. I don't know if they can bring it like Deion, because they don't have that Hall of Fame, in their name, attached to them, I should say. But it doesn't mean it makes them less of a coach. And it doesn't mean Deion's less of a coach. He's done a great job, and he exposed some things at the HBCU level. And I'm telling you right now, as someone, like, as I shared with you, I've had to deal with some HBCUs on the academic and financial aid end. And it ain't always been great looking. And sometimes things I learned were very hurtful and embarrassing for finding out about how not all, how some of our HBCUs have handled business, and some have not always, to me, been like taking care of our students. I'm not even talking about athletes, just students, just how some things are mishandled. And I'm going to be the first to tell you, some of our predominantly white institutions have some of the same issues, and you're not going to hear about it as much as you would when an HBCU does it, or a well-known HBCU run into some issues. And I would be just as hurtful, or just as embarrassing, if I worked at an institution. I don't care if it was a HBCU or a predominantly white institution. If I worked there and found out there was some stuff going on, I would be just as hurtful, embarrassed, and all of that. But I've never worked at HBCU, but I've worked for the state, Department of Education, and have had to have some dealings with some HBCUs, and it was a few that it was to me, it was hurtful and shameful of how bad business was being conducted on the financial aid side. And I even had some friends, even when I was in high school, that went to HBCUs, and sometimes some of the stories I would hear about their financial aid not there, not sure if they're going to be able to go back. I mean, different stories I've heard over the years that I've experienced is just, and so when Deion got to Jackson State and started exposing some things, some people didn't like it. To me, it's like, get your business in order. Deion is about business and doing things the right way. And I don't think anybody, to me, you're looking for something when you see somebody like Deion, and we've seen him be open I know on social media, he does some things live. He shares his heart. Is he perfect? By no stretch of imagination is he perfect. He's a man. He's going to make mistakes. Right? I'm going to make mistakes. If it was me, I'm sure people be saying something about me. I'm going to make mistakes. None of us are perfect. But he's nowhere near what some people are trying to make him out to be, like as if he's some god. And he'll be the first one to tell you, I know some people who grew up with him personally that I played college football with, that grew up with him. So I'm not telling you something that I think I know. I'm telling you something from people who grew up with this young man that I had the opportunity and blessing to play college football with, that knows him personally, that has shared some things with me about the person of Deion Sanders. So I'm not telling you something that I don't know what I'm talking about. And from what I see him do, I know he cares, and I know it probably hurts him, even when some of these young men say some of the things that they're saying, because they're no longer at Colorado, and they need to handle their social media business better than what they're doing right now. And as a parent, I wouldn't even allow my child to have said something like that. And if they did, we would be sitting down having a conversation. And I might even put something out there myself or make them repost something, because that's not how we'll operate in my house. And I'm telling you, my son went through some difficulties when he was in college. But guess what? When we sat down, when he was a quarterback and he decided that he was going to transition to being a wide receiver, I made sure as a parent responsible. Now, I was able to do this because of my knowledge and my experience as a former player, and at the time as a current coach when he was in college back in Florida, and somebody who was blessed to have the opportunity to play at the pro level, NFL, arena football, pro spring football. Well, I had an older brother play the NFL and the CFL and arena football. So we've been there and done that in our family. And everybody don't have that blessing and opportunity. So that's why Love the Game 24/7 podcast is coming at you live and coming to you, because I want to help folks deal with this stuff, so we can stop some of this nonsense that's being spewed over social media that's unnecessary, and it could backfire on an athlete. And as I said, when my son was in college and he went through, I made sure to sit down with him and give him the pros and cons about his decision. But ultimately he knew it was his decision. And whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, he knew he had his mom and dad's support. And I was going to do everything I could to make sure I laid it out for him, because I knew he had the ability to play at the next level. But because of where he was at, and because not just him, but there was other guys that should have been on the field more, that probably could have helped their team win more games. But the coach wasn't going to hear from me. His college coach wasn't going to hear from me. As a matter of fact, he didn't hear from me. He actually reached out to me, when we were entertaining possibly transferring. And I made it clear to the head coach that it wasn't going to be my decision, but as a parent, I would be doing my child a disservice if I didn't lay it out for him, if he was dealing with something at college like he was. And some of these young men are dealing with some things. But parents, if you don't know, You better get with somebody that knows, right? And if you don't know, now you know. And you heard it first from Love the Game 24/7 and Coach Smith live. Folks, you better get some information before you allow your young athlete to make some of the decisions that they're making and doing some of the things that they're doing. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, trying to reach out, trying to get people to partner with Love the Game 24/7 so that you can potentially reach um, your max potential and give yourselves opportunity. Because some people are going to miss opportunities because of some bad decisions. And sometimes you might need to stick it out where you are. Okay. And my son chose to take a hit and stick it out because he was loyal. My son's a loyal person, and sometimes to a fault. Okay. And so I had to have that conversation with him as well. That sometimes you can be loyal to a fault. But if you're going to step out there and take that risk and take that chance, you need to know what it's going to potentially be like, and can you handle it? And you can, and so, like I said, there were some things my son went through, and I saw the writing on the wall, and so did he. He made a decision. I gave him some options on possibly, maybe transferring, and I would tell you today, I think he should have. But hindsight is 2020. It still worked out for him. He worked through it. We worked through it, and he made his decision not to run from a situation, and he was going to stay there and do what he needed to do. But I laid it out for him and said, hey, if you're going to want to give yourself an opportunity, you're not going to get many as a wide receiver in this offense. But when you do get it, you better make the best of it. Okay. Whenever you get it. And there were times, even though I didn't agree with a lot of the play calling, because there was, along with my son, times where he should have been in the game, along with not just him, several other guys. If they would have been in the game more, or they would have threw the ball a little more with the speed and talent that they had at receiver to help that running game, they may have won an ACC championship. That's just my thoughts. Because they had a really good team. But the coach never heard from me, never got a call from me at all. Never. I dealt with my son. That's who I dealt with. My seed, me. I dealt with my home. I dealt with my people. It ain't my job to tell that college coach how to run his team, how to run his program. Now, if he asks me or she asks me, I would give my opinion if they asked me. But I wasn't asked, so I didn't give it. I didn't go on social media as a parent complaining about my son's playtime. I told my son, this is what you're going to have to do, because you're talented enough to go to the next level. But this is what you're going to have to do. That's what parents should be doing. That's what athletes should be doing. You keep that stuff in-house and you deal with it in-house. But we got to help build these young men up to learn how to deal with some adversity and learn how to persevere. I shared on my podcast not too long ago how my father dealt with me when I was in Little League and was ready to quit because I was unhappy that the coach was moving me to wide receiver, because that's what my brother played for him when my brother played for this coach when I was in Little League. And the whole time I was playing running back before I got up to this team. And we all know usually whatever position you play that you start at when you're small, that usually you stay there. Usually, not all the time, but in most cases, those other teams are waiting for the next talent to come up because they're trying to groom you and develop you, But granted, sometimes positions can change, or need to change for some guys because it's going to be better for them as they progress to high school. And they need to learn how to play that position, right? I coach a young man right now in the league, Amari Burney, out of the University of Florida. He played with my son 1 year with my son in ninth grade. He came on varsity in ninth grade. Great young man. Played pretty much every skill position. The boy could run, wide receiver, cornerback, sometimes free safety. He started out in ninth grade as a defensive end because he was big for a ninth grade and could run. And we would put him on the edge. But the head coach always told him, you're going to be a linebacker. You're going to be an outside linebacker. And sometimes he didn't argue with us too much. Sometimes, we would hear some grumblings. and whatnot. But for the most part, it was cool. But he's a good, humble young man. Now he's in the league at Las Vegas Raiders. And I had the blessing of coaching him in high school, his first 3 years in high school. But he ended up transferring to another high school. And that wasn't him. It was more of, a parent, not parents, not plural, a parent situation of why that happened. But it worked out for him. And I knew it would. It wouldn't matter because he had it before he transferred to the other high school. He had already had tons of offers that was generated because he was at Clearwater Central Catholic before he transferred and played that 1 year at the other high school. Well, actually 1 semester he went to that high school because he graduated early and went on to UF as an early admit in the spring term. So he only went to that high school for a half a semester, but most of his coaching and development came from Clearwater Central Catholic, CCC, back in Clearwater, Florida. So I just want to make sure folks who learn about Amari Burney know that. And he also has the blessing of playing with his cousin right now, facing cornerback, both at the Las Vegas Raiders. But I just said that to share with you about how, like I said with my son, there are things you handle in-house. There are things you don't put out on social media. And as a parent, I didn't tell, even when my son was in high school playing quarterback, I had the conversation with my son, even though he didn't have that mindset, but I still let him know just because your dad is coaching here at his high school doesn't give you carte blanche. You better come here and conduct yourself accordingly. Matter of fact, people are going to expect you to do so because you have a father like myself who played at every level and who's coaching here and who's a college administrator in higher education. So your expectation on how you need to conduct yourself is going to be looked at. And my boys are good kids. They weren't perfect by no stretch of the imagination, but they weren't kids out causing trouble doing a bunch of crazy stuff. They're kids being kids. They're going to do that, but nothing major to where that like a social media hurting their character or those kinds of things. Those are things that as parents we got to help train up our kids in those things. I'm a man of faith, and I go by what the word tells me. Train up a child in the way they should go. And if they depart from it when they get older, they'll come back to some common sense, right? And so I was a parent that liked to lay it out. Sorry about that, Marcus. Try to get me on. Try to join my YouTube. I'm speaking to somebody that's listening to me on Facebook. Let me just respond to my buddy Marcus Allen, who was a good running back in the Lakewood Spartan days. Good brother. He's a long-time attorney in Louisiana. I think, Marcus, if he's still in Louisiana. That Linktree link, Marcus, if you are able to hear on Facebook, try join, click on that Linktree link, or go to that Linktree link and get to my other social media platforms and try to join me on YouTube or IG. But I appreciate you joining me, brother. But yeah, so I'm just saying how it's important for us to be sure. Like I said, sometimes as a parent, you might feel like you have a place to say something, and there is a time that you have a place especially if your child is being abused or something of that nature. But when it comes to the business of sports, my years in college at Morningside, we got a new head coach my junior year, and they came in, and our coach was open, just like D.R.I.V.E.N is open, saying, "Hey, look, we're evaluating talent. Some guys that you see in this room may not be here, or may not have as much, may not be on full scholarship. And if you and hopefully you can still afford to attend, because Morningside was a private Division II school in Iowa. I think we were the only, at the time, we were the only Division II school in Iowa, and Northern Iowa was the only 1AA school in Iowa. They were either NAIA or Division III or Division I, Iowa State, those schools during the time when I was in college at Morningside. But our new head coach came in with same demands, right? And we all had to look at ourselves and decide as athletes, as football athletes. Okay, my mindset was, hey, because where I'm from in Florida, it was like, man, I ain't worried about nothing. I'm a baller. I know what kind of work I put in. I ain't losing the scholarship. And I didn't, but that was my mentality. That was my makeup. And it didn't. Some of those other guys didn't. Some guys, we were trying to turn the program around to become a, powerhouse in Division II, and we did turn some things around majorly. And the coaches had to make decisions because he's trying to bring other recruits in that he feels that are more talented and is going to help us get to where we need to be. Because he has a job, he has a contract. We're on contract when we sign that scholarship. All right, we have to realize that. That's why I said, don't call it free education, because it ain't free. Because when you're in college on scholarship, you're not allowed to have a job. You can't work. Why? Because you already have a job playing college sports, and the rules are you can't have a job. Did some guys work around that because some guys needed money? Absolutely, some guys. And there was some with some of the rules with the NCAA you could change, and some guys could go get a job, like if it was pertaining to their degree, probably. And I know some guys worked at UPS because we had a program on our campus where we had a training facility with UPS on our campus, a major training facility. So a lot of UPS managers, it was a management training building we had on campus that UPS invested into Morningside, and they would come and periodically have people come for a week of training from UPS on campus. So they provide, they had a building that they supported on campus, but then some guys could do stocking and things like that. But for the most part, you're not allowed to have a job when you're on scholarship unless you got something to prove to where you could work. And so it's not free money. But as I said, as a parent, I never felt like, oh, did I think about it? I need to have a talk with coach, man, because what's going on? Of course. But out of respect as a coach, being a coach, I had parents in high school would say things, and sometimes I have to, calm some parents down and help them understand, look, we know what we're doing. And if we didn't know what we're doing, we wouldn't be putting all those kids in college. And so sometimes I had to reflect back that on parents. Like, look, we're a powerhouse program in the state of Florida in 3A football. And we would go play and beat some 4A, 5A, 7A schools in the state of Florida. Some big programs, because we had that kind of talent in our area, right? And I forgot to mention on the last podcast, 2 kids from St. Pete got drafted. And I know there's a lot more kids that got signed, some undrafted if they came out. But I know one young man that I had the blessing of coaching, the Newton brothers, has his brother, the younger brother's playing quarterback right now back at CCC, doing a great job, and he's a major recruit. The one just above him that just got drafted, Johnny Newton from Illinois, a Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 10 or Big 12, whatever they call it now, out of Illinois. He just got drafted in the 2nd round. TJ Tampa, know his father, well-known name back in St. Pete as well. He was at Iowa State cornerback. He got drafted in the 4th round. So I just want to get that plug about my hometown, St. Pete, and how we always represent when it comes to the NFL draft and talent, along with many guys before me, with me, and after me. So I just want to get that plug. But just to get back on topic, where, like I said, I never spoke to a coach to try to tell them about how they need to do things. Okay. That's not, and as a coach, I didn't appreciate it. Did I deal with it? Of course, I talked to people and had to help explain parents, because they felt like they saw somebody that looked like them, and there was a bit of unfair pressure or criticism on me sometimes, because we're at a predominantly white Catholic school. And because I was one of the black coaches, because we had several, people felt comfortable. And that's cool. And I'm glad they did. They felt comfortable that they could come talk to me, But I would always go back and make sure I followed up with the head coach about what was going on. I didn't keep stuff. Hey, coach, this wasn't going on. This is the concern. The parents had a concern. And not necessarily for him to do something different, just because he should know the information. And I would also tell the parents, hey, I'll talk. I'm going to talk to the coach about your concern, right? Just like you gave it to me, And there are times I know he did follow with some of the parents, or he would follow with the athlete, right? And then let the athlete know, go make sure you talk to your parents about such and such. But like I said, even when my son was in college, absolutely, I wish I could have talked to the head coach, or he would have asked me, but it wasn't my place. So I made sure to talk to my son, because you're going through something, and this is how it's going to be, and and you're going to get frustrated, So I'm letting you know up front, and then so it won't be no surprise. But just make sure, and this is what some of these athletes have to understand: when you get your opportunity, show up. No excuses. Know what you're supposed to be doing. Know where you're supposed to be. Right? If I'm a defensive player, know my defensive coverages or lineups or formations. Make the play when I'm supposed to make the play. Don't miss the tackle. Don't miss the pick. Right? And if I'm on offense, make the blocks you're supposed to make. Know the plays that's being called, where nobody got to keep explaining to you. Take, when it's a game situation. Take all that time up in practice to figure out what you're missing. Okay, then when we call this play, we get a different look, but you still know there are rules on where you're supposed to step down if somebody's in your gap on a certain play that's being called, or if nobody's in that gap, or on the outside gap, or on the inside gap, or they head up. Who are you trying to influence on this play to open it up for your running back and for the leading blocker, or whatever the case may be, or pass blocking? Where your eyes need to go if you got a man on the outside of you, 9 technique, as opposed to inside. Where your eyes supposed to go first to kind of help, because you might have a blitzing linebacker coming through that gap that you didn't pick up. You got to know how to pick up on some things. So always tell players and try to tell parents, you better have a conversation with your young person, your young athlete, your young girl or boy, and make sure you tell them, just like I told my son when he changed positions and decided to stay where he was and not go in the transfer portal. And it was his decision. Ultimately, it's his decision. But I gave him every scenario that I could possibly think of to help him make that decision. And then we roll with that decision. And then once we start riding with that decision, hey, okay, you're going to play receiver. All right, this how you need to run. Let's work on some route running. I got his uncle out there. His uncle was a number 1 wide receiver in Division II football. My brother played both ways, just like Travis Hunter, wide receiver in DB. Ain't the first time. He did a great job playing. Todd Smith, my brother, played both ways at a high level in college. Okay, and then decided his senior year he wanted to go as a wide receiver. He felt his chances of going to the league was better at wide receiver. He was, just under 6 feet, over 5'11", ran 10 300 meters, ran 400-meter hurdles, was all that as well in college in Division II, top track guy, top football guy. Like I said, he led the nation in receiving his senior year in Division II. Caught about 89 or 90 footballs that year, and was over a little over 1,000 yards, and had quite a few touchdowns. May have had like 10 or 12 touchdowns, somewhere in there, maybe more, because most of the time when we were throwing the ball, he was getting them anyway. But we got with my son. I was all-purpose running back, played some wide receiver at the next level, and running back, and like, hey, this is what you're gonna have to learn how to run routes. He put work in with his boys in college. They would put extra work in, and like I said, my conversation with him was, okay, if you're gonna hang, this is how we need to deal with it. Whether you leave or whether you stay, you got to be a man, right? You got to be a woman. You got to be strong. You got to be smart. You got to be wise. Okay. And I don't think at one time my son ever thought about posting something on social media about what he was dealing with because of how he was raised. And we have to teach our kids because, like I said, these young men or young ladies, you're a talent that could potentially go to the next level. If you don't think these teams are being watchful of how you handle a tough situation, they're thinking right now. See, right now, you're probably some of these athletes are NBA or NFL prospects or WNBA prospects or NHL, whatever it may be, or whoever you may be, and you're dealing with a situation. You're already being ranked and rated in your class for the next level. Trust me, all these young men have a rating. Some of them may not be that good because some of them aren't that good. All right. And you're delaying your development with all this moving around and you not go play at that next level. Because if you're going to transfer, you better have a show enough agreement and opportunity. And if you get that opportunity, you better show up. Because if you post it and put stuff out there, all this stuff that's being put out there about Coach D.R.I.V.E.N or whoever, whatever player or whatever school, you better show up. You better ball out. And that's what I'm saying. You're going to bring some unnecessary attention to yourself, but you better ball out because you've said all this and making it seem like it's everybody else's fault. But then when you get to somewhere where you feel like, oh, this is a better place for me. And it may not, and it may be, but it's still on you on how you're going to perform. Because you may end up going to the same situation where that coach is going to do the same thing Dion or any other coach is going to hold you accountable to, is your play on the field and what you do off the field. There are some coaches that will tolerate some foolishness because you might be playing well. Dion ain't one of them. And I know some of those kids aren't perfect. And there's some things he's making a decision with on what a kid got themselves into, because he's going to have some kids that's going to get into some things. Right? And then some people want to complain about, his kids. Well, his kids are ballers. Don't forget, Shiloh and Shadura had offers in Power 5 programs coming out of high school. Right? So, and I believe Shiloh, if I have it right, Shiloh played free safety at South Carolina before he came to play for his dad at Jackson State. Right? If I got the names right. I get them confused sometimes. My wife always have to correct me because she knows it. She got me the one start watching his show back in the day when they were younger, and bossy. So just know the son that plays free safety was at South Carolina. Okay. And the son that plays quarterback, he showed you what he could do with no offensive line, running for his life on a lot of occasions, standing in the pocket, taking some hits, and delivering that football. Because he had some wide receivers. Okay. Travis Hunter is not the only kid that's a good receiver. He has some good wide receivers. And for some folks to sit up here, you don't know football. I see some comments out there with some people. I'm like, I know some of y'all couldn't have played football or maybe even played sports. And some people are trying to say, I don't care what his record is. See, some people get too caught up on wins and losses, on whether somebody can play or not. All right. I know we give a lot of quarterbacks a lot of credit, and they deserve it a lot of times, whether it come good or bad. They deserve it. But they have the football in their hand most of the time. That's why. Okay. They deserve a lot of credit. And some negativity if they aren't playing well. Okay. It's part of the job. It comes along with that position. But they have the ball in their hands every time. But like I said, some of you all get too caught up in wins and losses. Of course, everybody wants to win. Okay. And you need help on defense, and you need some playmakers on offense. Right? You can be as good as you want to as a quarterback, but if you don't have no playmakers to deliver the ball to, which he does, and he delivers the ball to them, right? But you got to have a running game. Don't ever think we can't throw. It can't be a throwing game. You're gonna have to have a running game. That running game is gonna have to help carry the passing game, and vice versa. And he doesn't have the offensive line. Okay, So, but so don't get mad with Coach D.R.I.V.E.N because he has his sons playing. Because I know Dabo Swinney had a son playing. I know the Stoops have a son playing. I know my son coach when he was in college at Boston College had a son playing. So, and don't sit up here and say if you had a son or daughter and you were a coach that your child wouldn't play or that you weren't going to give them every opportunity to play if you knew they could play. You're absolutely right. I am. Absolutely. Now, when my son was in high school, I wasn't the head coach, and I told the head coach, "Your responsibility because he played. You the head coach, and you the offensive coordinator." And I told there was conversation me and my son would have about some things, of course, but ultimately, because the head coach was the offensive coordinator, I didn't go to him and tell him that. I told my son, "You got to show that you're deserving of having that starting quarterback position. You got to show I would tell my son, you need to go sit down. You need to go sit down and talk with the coach in the office sometime in between class when he was in high school and in college, and get in the head coach or whoever the offensive coordinator is headed, whoever the offensive coordinator is, so you can know how they think, because you got to be them on the football field." That's how I taught my son how to do things, how to prepare himself, and he did that when he was in high school. He would go by and sit with the head coach who was the offensive coordinator, Coach Davis. Because I told him you gotta earn that, bro, and you gotta ball out. Y'all go look at his high school huddle. Look up Jeff Smith II huddle highlights. And you tell me if you think he was worth it. I'll let that speak for itself. But those were conversations that I had with my son saying, look, you got to show yourself approved. You got to show yourself worthy. I don't care what position you play. You got to show up and show out. If you that boy, if you that guy, if you that girl, I'm gonna tell you, you mine, even my players, especially when my players that I had at running back that I coach, or DB or wide receiver, if they were that guy, I'm like, look, this is what you better do when you get this opportunity. I need you to show up. Okay, you got to ball out. It can't just be talk. This is football. So if you're gonna talk and say some stuff out there on social media, you better back it up when you get your opportunity. And I hope they do, whoever they are. I don't know them. Like I said, I know people who I played college ball with that know Dion. I got a good one of my best friends was a trainer for Florida State when all those guys were there as well. So I know from him as well personally. I know other people that know and was around that program at Florida State when Dion was there. So I know he cares. And he's not wrong, just like any other coach. His boys can play. And don't tell me his son is not a good quarterback when he came where he came from. He could have went Power 5 right out of high school and did well. But just cause their record was improved greatly, and his stats shows that he's a top talented quarterback coming out in the draft next year. If you don't think so, then you don't know football. But like I said, these kids, you are rated, and you're gonna lose your stock. There's money and opportunity at every level that you get drafted in the draft at every sport, and they're looking at all that stuff, right? They're looking at all how you handle business. And if you're not somebody that handle business well, like what we see with some of these kids on social media, like my son told me on many occasions, oh yeah, we get rated, Dad. When I was in college, they monitor how much you're studying film when you're in college and in the pros. They monitor your social media. And when these guys get drafted, they're rating you based off all that stuff, man, these days, on how you're putting stuff out there. And parents, you got to be careful. Now, granted, are they going to take a risk on some players who really can ball, or young ladies who really can ball? Oh yeah, they'll deal with some stuff they feel like they can, that's not maybe all that bad, or that they feel like they can reel in and sit down and have a conversation because they're about to give multi-millions of dollars to a young man or a young lady with endorsements, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, but we've seen Antonio Brown issues. We've seen some other players issues where that stuff, man, runs out eventually, because we know there's some other talent that's coming up that we can develop, that we don't want to deal with all this unnecessary comments that's being spewed out there on social media. So right now, young people, be careful. Parents, help your student, help your young athlete be responsible and be wise, and you be wise as a parent And be careful about what you say out on social media and what you put out there, because they're watching you as well. And like I said, at every level, there's money in the draft, right? At every level you get drafted, there's a certain dollar amount and there's a certain opportunity that they're going to give you. The lower you get drafted, the less money you get paid and the less opportunity you're going to have, all the way down to an undrafted free agent like my son, who didn't get many opportunities, but he took advantage of his opportunities. And when he took advantage, and because he took advantage of his opportunities, it's allowed him to still be in the league going on year 6. And I can guarantee you, if you go and look at my son's social media, you won't see some crazy stuff out there because of what conversations we had when he was a young person, as well as in his programs that he came through in college, in high school, because we dealt with it in high school. We dealt with it as a parent. We dealt with it as a coaching staff at CCC at Cloverwood Central Catholic under Coach Davis. My son dealt with it at Boston College and under Coach Adazio, who I think does a great job in helping grow young men. My son was there at Boston College, right? Didn't like his play calling, but he did a great job in developing young men. I have no question about that. And I know those kids who came in and did what they need to do, he took care of that. You know, was he perfect? No. Did he make mistakes? Yes. All because we're human. We're all gonna make mistakes. But just know, young person, you young guys out there, athletes out there, that not just at Colorado, but wherever you are, be careful what you put on social media and what you complain about. Because these NFL teams, or NBA teams, or whatever team, NHL, MLB, whatever, they're watching and monitoring. And they're deciding, okay, what can we tolerate from what we're seeing and what's being said. So your stock can either go up or it can go down. Okay. And like I said, at every level you get drafted, there's a certain amount of money to be made, right? And it decreases as the draft goes on. That money gets less and less, and the opportunity that they're going to give you when you get in camp is going to be less, based on a first round pick compared to a 5th or 4th round pick. I don't care how good you might be, better than that first round pick. And it happens sometimes for whatever reason. It's play on the field, talent level, what they think when they met with that guy one-on-one. You know, my son, even though he went undrafted, he went on like 4 or 5 visits before the draft. You know, the Packers, I think, of course, back home with the Bucks, the Saints, the Vikings. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it was like 4. I can't remember all of it, but he went on like 4 or 5 interviews before the draft when he came out. People trying to get to know the player or trying to confirm some things that they have seen or heard about you. Right? So we have to make sure we handle our social media business, mom and dad, young athlete, because it could be hurting your bag or it could help your bag. Which one do you prefer? Sometimes it's best not to say anything, right? Or be respectful about it behind the scenes and handle it that way. It's not always good to make comments. Deion Sanders is a Hall of Famer. He's been around. He's played at every level. Okay, he knows something. He's a subject matter expert, but he's also a head coach at a Power 5 school that has to make some hard business decisions. And sometimes it means this young man that I thought was going to work out is not working out. And I'm trying to turn this program around and win games. And don't make it out to be like Deion is worse. In our community, let's stop making it seem like Deion is worse because he's just handling business the way business should be handled. But we may not always like it or agree with it. But it's his decision. So parents, just like I said, I could have done the same thing on social media. There's some stuff I kept in our family, in our house, or I kept within the family of what team my son was on. And we handle it that way. Or I talk to my son and say, hey, you need to go talk to the coach, or hey, tell me what the coach, how did the conversation go? But these are some things that you need to point out. These are some things you need to ask or say. But ultimately, my main conversation with my athlete was when you get your opportunity You have to show up. You got to show them why you should have the ball more. People should be saying, why aren't we getting him the ball more? Why aren't she on the court more? Why aren't he or she playing more? Because when we see them get their one opportunity or a few opportunities, they make something happen. That's what the conversation needs to be. And let the rest handle itself. But stay off social media, putting your kid out there, or your kid or your athlete putting themselves out there that could potentially hurt their bag, because you are being watched. And you got to have some integrity. We got to stop operating out of ignorance. And that's why you need to partner with Love the Game 24/7 and Coach Smith, so we can help coach up folks to be successful or know how to handle this stuff. And it's not easy. It's difficult. It's frustrating. Believe you me. If there's anything I know about how frustrating it can be when your child is out there playing and you know they have more to offer, I pray. I put my faith and trust in God, and He ain't failed me yet. I lost my father, like I said, when I was in 9th grade to cancer. He blessed me and my brothers to get athletic scholarships to pay for our education. We were responsible in handling that opportunity. And we've done some things in our lives to I know my father would be proud if he was alive to see it. I know he would be. And I wish he was able to see it. But I want to be sure that every young person that I touch, not just my own kids, every family that I had an opportunity to touch, that I coached, that they understood. I didn't want them to ever say, Coach Smith, man, why didn't you tell us such and such? No, you're going to hear it from me. Okay. And I'm going to give it to you in love, and I'm going to give it to you straight. And I'm going to give it to you real and honest. And I'm going to tell you, he ain't balling or she ain't doing what she needs to be doing. Okay. To make people think otherwise, I'm going to give it to you straight. So that's why I want to have this conversation today, because it's just frustrating how we're trying to make, one of our few Black coaches we have in college, where people are saying different things, and people making some comments. Some people making some great comments. There's some great comments out there that's shedding some light. But trust me, a lot of people don't realize in the end result, if that kid or that young athlete doesn't make it to the next level, it's going to be everybody else's fault. But it ain't going to be your fault that you put something out here in social media that was inappropriate. You as an athlete said something that was probably should have, hey, just keep that in the house, man, or young lady, or family member saying some things. It's going to be everybody else's fault. You got to look at the common denominator, right? If you're always the one saying that somebody else's fault and not taking responsibility, and when the consequences come, it can't always be everybody else's fault. And as I said, I'm not that type of person. I've been through stuff, right? That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. And I know my buddy Marcus Allen, who was trying to get on, he could tell you some of the stuff we didn't have the help from our high school coaches. We made it despite or in spite of not getting the help that a lot of us should have gone Division I. A lot more guys I played with should have gone Division I before me, with me, and after me. Definitely the ones, the coach that was there we had in high school. Like I said, I had to learn to forgive him. I had to move on. I've been past that. But it doesn't mean I'm supposed to forget, because I didn't forget. I can forgive, but it doesn't mean I'm supposed to forget. And the reason why I didn't need to forget is because I'm doing what I'm doing now with this and helping some other young people. That's why I got into coaching. Okay, myself in high school, especially when my kids came through it. I didn't want stuff what happened to me to happen to some other kid that should be getting an opportunity to go play somewhere, some young lady, right? Like I said, recruiting is recruiting, no matter what sport, no matter when you're male or female, whether I'm talking about football or basketball, it's all recruiting is recruiting. And there's some things that you got to take responsibility for and do and market yourself and carry yourself a certain way. Okay. And that's not just on the athlete, that's also on the family. Okay. And so I know there's a lot of people that don't know how this thing works. I see it all the time. And some people don't realize that they're hurting themselves more than helping themselves. And like I said, I don't want you to hurt yourself. So partner up with Coach Smith and Love the Game 24/7, you can email me at lovethe247game@gmail.com to get more information about how you can partner up, and how you can help, how we can help you improve your experience for your young lady or your young daughter, your young son, or niece or nephew, whoever it may be to you, in their athletic recruiting for their sport. Guaranteed, Love the Game 24/7 can help. And I'm glad Marcus Allen joined, because like I said, I'm coming with some interviews. So he popped on here today. I hope he was able to join me in some other means, but he's probably somebody I definitely will have to now interview as well, because Marcus is now an attorney, successful attorney, and is doing very well. And I know he has a story that he can share from our upbringing in St. Pete. And I'd like for you guys to hear those stories so we can help you. Okay, that's what it's all about. Help inform you and make good decisions and make your opportunities, and help teach these young people how to deal with adversity, how to persevere, how to not always run from situations, but how to run to it and meet it head on. Right? Because sometimes when you run right at that thing and not away from it, you'll crush it, you'll break it down, and you'll be successful. Right? If you always run from something, it's going to always chase you until you conquer it. So it's best to turn around, face it, and run right at it. Right at it. So I appreciate you guys joining me live, or if you're listening to me, the recording. But this is your host, Coach Jeff Smith, with Love the Game 24/7 podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show today. I hope you learned something. I hope you got some great information, and hope you share and hit that subscribe button. Continue to help me to grow my audience, and help our young people. So you all have a blessed day. Have a great weekend. And until Wednesday, you guys take care of yourselves and enjoy your summer that's coming up. And let's get out to these camps in your sport to help market yourself and your recruiting opportunities. And even if you are being heavily recruited, there's still some things you need to learn about social media and how you need to handle things, and parents as well. We can help on all fronts. All right. So be blessed and take care, guys.